Welcome to the Acrylic Portrait Painting Challenge Masterclass, lesson number 1, prepping your canvas for the portrait. And this is our winter 2025 portrait painting challenge, our first ever winter challenge. You can see I've got my Panama City, Florida shirt on, just trying to think warm while it's so cold outside here in Wisconsin. But I'm looking forward to teaching you how to paint a portrait you can be proud of. Even if you've never done it before, this is your opportunity to step out in faith, try something new with a community of like-minded artists and a teacher willing to show you how to do it and paint that portrait for the first time. You can do this, and I'll be helping you every step of the way. Many artists as well all over the world who are taking this challenge will be willing to help you as well. So looking forward to seeing your painting here in the challenge. And hey, if you haven't signed up for the challenge, let's do it. Let's get you signed up today. It's completely free. And when you sign up, you'll get the welcome kit, which includes everything you need to paint along with us here. You're going to get the supplies list. You're going to get the palette layout guide. And of course, you're going to get the reference photo, which you can upload to your device. And I have the reference photo with and without the grid, so be able to get you a really nice sketch with excellent proportions so you can have a great foundation to paint upon. And I'm looking forward to teaching you. So you can sign up at realisticacrylic.com/acrylic-portrait-painting-challenge. And then, like I said, when you sign up, you'll get access to the welcome kit, and I'll email you the lessons as soon as they come out. So it's a win-win situation. All right, well, let's get into this. In our last pre-lesson video, I basically showed you the different supplies you're going to need to paint along with us, and we got our supplies all gathered up. In this video, we're going to get the canvas prepped. We're going to get it ready to paint upon. Now, before I begin this lesson, I just want to ask a quick word of prayer, and then we'll get started. So, Father, I ask a blessing on this lesson. I pray you'd help me be able to teach it with clarity. I pray for the students that they would be able to learn, retaining what I teach, and to put that knowledge into practice and get their canvases ready. Any snags, difficulties they might run into, I pray they would be able to overcome through the wisdom that I believe you will give them, that you've already given them, and also through asking me for help or asking others in the group for help. So we thank you, Lord. You are able. We trust you. We're looking forward to what you're going to help us do. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, so assuming you have all of your supplies ready, if you don't, as soon as you sign up for the challenge, you'll be taken to a confirmation page where you'll have the welcome kit you can download, and that'll give you a list of the supplies you need. But I'm assuming you have all of your supplies gathered up. There might be one or two things that I didn't mention on the supplies list. It just seems to happen almost every time we do the challenge. One of those things is a condiment container. You could also use a paper cup or any disposable cup that you might get your hands on. But we're going to need that for today to gesso the canvas. Now, before you gesso the canvas, this will be step number 1. You set your canvas up on the easel. This is a 16 by 20 canvas. That's what we're using for this portrait challenge. Set it up nice and firmly on the easel. And you want to make sure that your canvas has square corners. Now, you could use a square, if you have that, but really you can just kind of check it by eye and make sure it looks, square to the eye. You also want to look at it from the side and make sure it's not bowing out. Because sometimes if you buy these canvases in a multi-pack, some of them will just be a little wonky, and you might have one that's just kind of out of square, and it's, you can tell as you look at it on the side that it's just not lined up the way it should be. The other thing you might notice too is that you have some dents on your canvas, depending on how it was packaged, and you might have some wrinkles in the corners. And so if that's the case, if you're encountering that, one way you can quickly resolve that issue is to spray the back of your canvas just using a mister. This is a spray mist called Flairosol. I'm just spraying water. And what you do is just kind of spray it all over. You might also need to spray down in the corners as well, just to make sure that hopefully you can see this here as there we go. You just spray into the corners, each corner, and flip it around. Again, I have to tip it the right way so it's viewable. So you spray it, you know, quite a bit more than I sprayed there. Really get everything saturated on the back of your canvas, and then just basically hang it up to dry. You can hang it up with a couple of hooks if you put a hook on the back, or maybe a small screw. Just be careful not to splinter your wood. You can hang it up that way. I have some hooks in my studio here where I hang the canvas up, and that works really, really well. And I have wood heat going during the winter and a blower, so it dries out very quickly. Depending on your environment, it might take longer, it might take a whole day for it to dry out. For me, it just took like an hour or so. But anyway, when you spray that water on the back of that canvas, it's going to get nice and tight. It's going to sound like a drum. So you'll know you're doing well when you see all the wrinkles kind of completely taken out. And you can see here, and I'm looking at this, just trying to make sure it's in the shot, some wrinkles are still there. So if you notice wrinkles in the corner, you just want to spray inside these corners a little bit more, making sure that water saturates to all the edges of the canvas. And again, then you let it dry completely. Now, hopefully you don't have that problem. Hopefully your canvas is just good to go when you take it out of the package. And if it is, fantastic. I just want to share that tip with you in case you do encounter that problem. All right, so now our next step here is to gesso our canvas. Now, why would we want to gesso the canvas? It's already got a gesso primer on it that it came with when you bought it from the art store. Well, there's a couple of different reasons. One reason is that the canvas is not going to be quite as firm and as rigid with the primer they put on. They usually only put on a very thin coat of primer. And if you add a couple more coats of gesso, it can give that canvas a little more rigidity, give it a little more strength and resilience, so it's more archival. The other thing too is that you want to make sure that this canvas for our painting we're going to be working on in the challenge is very, very smooth. Because if you look at a reference photo, we have a lot of detail here. A lot of detail. And that is going to be challenging to paint all the detail on a bumpy canvas. It's possible you could just paint it without putting any gesso on here if you're not comfortable doing that. It's just going to be a little harder. But I'm going to demonstrate how to gesso your canvas so it's smoother, because we want to be able to capture that detail without having so much difficulty being encountered by the bumpiness of the canvas weave. So we're going to smooth things out a little bit. I'll show you how to do that. So why don't you go ahead and grab your condiment container. This is a disposable mini cup. That's what they call it. You can buy them at Walmart and stores like that. Or you could use any kind of small cup, even if it's a little taller, and that would work too. I'm just going to hold it here so you can see it against the black drop. And then what we're going to do is we're going to squirt some gesso into this. And in this case, I have my jug of gesso, so I have to be careful not to overdo it. I think you'll be able to see, and excuse the messy art table here. This is kind of how I roll. But anyway, we're going to be just putting in a little bit of gesso. Probably should be a good idea to shake it up. Realize as I look at it, it looks like the binder is separated a little bit from the water. So I'm just going to put the lid back on here really tight. And I'm just going to give it a good shake. Make sure we have it nice and shaken up. Okay. So now we're going to go ahead and just pour out a little bit of gesso, enough to maybe fill it about 1/3 of the way full. Just kind of fill the bottom of that container. Okay, you can see it now. Sorry, my head was in the way. All right, just set this here. And I had a little ring that was on the container fall into the cup. So let me just get that out of there. All right, and now you might find it handy to do this with gloves. This might not be a bad idea. Put on a couple of gloves if you don't want to get gesso all over your hand. Seems like that can happen sometimes. It will wash off, but it's a little difficult to get off. So let's put a couple of gloves on here. And then go ahead and take your matte medium. Squirt some of that in here. We're gonna basically mix this to about 50-50 matte medium and gesso. And it could be a little bit less. You could have maybe a ratio of 75% gesso to about 25% matte medium, but it doesn't have to be a precise ratio. Basically what we want to do is just thin out that gesso a little bit. You can use the heel end of an old brush or something to stir it. Just stir that really, really thoroughly. And just keep stirring it till it's really a nice consistency. I'm just going to add a little bit more matte medium just to make sure I don't run out. So that is going to be about 50-50 mix. I like to add matte medium to the gesso just to ensure that it's going to dry. Well, it's going to apply a little bit more smoothly. I find if I use just straight gesso, it ends up creating a little too much brush texture and it's not as smooth. So not only that, when you mix matte medium into the gesso, it's a perfect surface to sketch upon. So it seems to accept the colored pencil more readily when you have matte medium mixed in. All right, so we'll take that and now let's see. I think we have this mixed really nice here, and we're going to start applying this to the canvas. So for that, you can just take a 1-inch flat brush, and if you have a larger brush, you know, I have a larger brush here that I'll sometimes use, but you might not have that. So you can use a 1-inch brush and just work your way across. So we're just going to go ahead and dip our brush into the gesso matte medium mix. Start on the left-hand side. And we're going to just start brushing. Kind of start or about the middle or 2/3 part of the canvas, and then brush downward. Redip your brush. Get a good amount of the mixture on your brush. And then go ahead and smooth out your brush stroke. And we're going to reload. Keep it going. Okay, and we'll dip our brush in again, kind of start partway down. And then just kind of smooth out our brush strokes. We don't want to overbrush it. Don't want to underbrush it or overbrush it. Kind of brush it across like that. Okay, so notice that I'm not going back into the left-hand side. I'm trying to keep a wet edge and just moving from left to right. Because if we overbrush it, that's when we can get some problems with too much brush texture, tackiness, adhesion problems where the acrylic doesn't want to adhere. Just try to smooth it out in a couple of strokes. Smooth it out a few times. You'll find that matte medium really makes it a nice creamy mixture. It should apply nicely. Now, if you use a different brand of gesso, it might be a little bit thicker or thinner than what I'm using here with Nova Color. So just keep that in mind. Your gesso should not be watery. I don't recommend using student grade gessos. Definitely use a good quality brand like Novacolor or Liquitex. All right, I think that is it. You can maybe add a little bit around the edge of the canvas, but it's not super important. Just want to make sure you don't have any, strange drips or anything like that. On the top, I see I have just a little bit of a drip there. Just get that. And you should have a nice even application all the way across. So I don't know if you can see any texture at all on here. You shouldn't be able to see any. That's basically what it's going to look like. All right, so this is what it should look like here when your canvas is covered with the gesso. And you just want to make sure that this dries completely. Depending on your environment, it might take a whole day. For me here in Wisconsin with the winter air and the wood heat, probably just take a couple of hours. And you can double check to make sure it's dry by touching it. It needs to feel dry to the touch and not feel cold at all. It should be, it should feel just like room temperature. So if it feels dry to the touch, you can go ahead and sand the canvas, and that's going to be our next step. We want to sand that layer of gesso, and then we'll recoat it with another layer. All right, I'll see you in the next step. All right, now it's time for step number 2, which is sanding your canvas. You finished up with a layer of gesso and matte medium on the canvas. It's completely dry to the touch. And now we want to sand the canvas. And then after that, we'll hit it with another layer of gesso and matte medium. But the sanding is going to help to ensure that your canvas is extra smooth so you can sketch properly without a lot of inhibition from the canvas texture, and then also paint a lot easier as well. So what you want to do is grab your sanding block and a piece of sandpaper. You're looking at, probably 220 grit or higher. I have a 320. If you go below 220 grit, it starts to get too coarse and it's going to end up taking up too much of the canvas texture. So what you want to do is just set your sandpaper facing down like this with the label side out against the bottom of your block. And then you just push your sandpaper onto the prongs and let that poke through and hold it in place. And that's just like that. And then you're going to go ahead and click the other side on. This is going to be now the handle side of your sandpaper, and now you've got a nice firm edge where you can sand with. And then you also want to put on a mask because there will be dust flying around from the gesso and you don't want to breathe that in. It's good to be healthy so you can paint for a long, long time to come. Put on a mask. Okay, and we'll go ahead and start sanding. It's not going to take very long, but you can hit it with, the wide side of your sanding block. That'll work well. Just go over and, work your way from left to right. And back and forth. You want to use light pressure. Okay. And then you can just kind of touch the canvas and see how it feels, see how it looks. You still should see quite a bit of the weave of the canvas. You don't want to over sand it, because if you take away all the weave, then your paint will have a little bit of a harder time applying to the canvas. The texture of the canvas actually kind of holds in some of the glazes and the layers, and it's much easier to blend and spread them out when you have that texture there. So we just want a little bit of texture, and you might be able to see that in the video. I'm just going to go over it a little bit more. Okay, you can see on the other side of your block some of the gesso that came off, which is normal. And that's pretty much it. So I'm going to call this good. Again, I don't want to over sand it. After this, what you want to do is take us to step number 3, which will be to apply another layer of gesso onto the canvas, mixture of gesso and matte medium. And let's go ahead and wipe off some of this dust off of the canvas. We're going to take a paper towel and just spray it with our sprayer. Just lightly. And then you can go ahead and take this towel and just kind of wipe off the dust off your canvas. Oops. I got a little piece of, I had my metal piece falling down there in the top. Okay, there we go. And we're just going to wipe this down really good. Really well, if I want to use correct grammar. There. All right, so now we'll want to apply one more layer of gesso. And let's go ahead and do that. Again, this is about 50-50 gesso and matte medium. So we'll dip in and go ahead and cover that just like before in the previous sketch. Really makes a nice sound. I love that sound. Let's give it nice, long smoothing strokes. Keep that wet edge. Don't keep working into the side that you did. Sometimes you might have to get the top a little bit more. Now, if you have a larger brush, by all means use it. It's going to make the process easier. Like a 2-inch brush would probably work better. The matte medium mixed into the gesso will help it to have a smoother application. Okay, we'll keep smoothing this out. Make sure we don't have any drips or anything like that. It's good to use downward strokes to finish it. And that's pretty much it. If you want to hit the sides of the canvas, you certainly can, but it's not the most important thing. And so what we'll do is we'll let this dry again, about the same time as the first layer. And then after this dries, we can go ahead and sand it one more time. And then after that, we'll be ready to put on the grid lines. So I will see you in that step. All right, now you have your second layer of gesso on and it's completely dry. I mean, it should be completely dry. Just touch it to make sure. And then what we want to do is sand that gesso matte medium layer. And after that, we can begin sketching in our grid lines. So let's go ahead and put on a face mask and we're going to start sanding. So same thing as before. Okay, that should be it for that. And then you'll want to take your paper towel and spray that with a little water mist. We're going to go ahead and just wipe this off. Make sure we get all the dust off of our canvas. All right, excellent. And so now that's going to take us to step number 3, where we're going to actually sketch the grid. And that's, we're going to take a gray Prismacolor colored pencil. Also, you're going to take a ruler. I have an 18-inch ruler here. That should work well. Whatever you have would be good. If you get into a yardstick, that it's usually a little too difficult to work with. It's a little too long and cumbersome. But if you're working maybe on a table, it might be easy to use because you don't have to try to finagle it and keep it from falling out of your hand. I'm going to use this 18-inch ruler, but you know, use whatever long ruler you have, and that's going to get the job done. So what we want to do is plot out our grid lines using 2-inch squares, and you know, that's based on a reference photo, and I have this gridded for you in your welcome kit. So we've got an 8x10 image in the welcome kit, and I have 8 squares across. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, just have it kind of closed off by the screen. And then we have 10 going vertically. So 8 horizontally, 10 vertically, so 80 squares in total. And when we multiply this, you know, times 2, that gives us 16 by 20, right? You know, 8 by 10, 16 by 20. And then with that, we would use 2-inch squares. And that's going to give us then, you know, dividing the width of the canvas, which is 16, you know, divided by 2 is going to give us the 2-inch squares. It'll give us 8 squares across and then 10 high. So we also have an inset grid as well, which I think might be beneficial for us because of all the detail that we're going to be drawing in the face and you know, other areas of his body. So having the extra grid lines will probably help in terms of getting accurate proportions. And so for that, we're just going to divide those 2-inch grids or 2-inch squares again into 1-inch squares. But let's begin just by doing the main grid. And we'll just start measuring across. So you just take your ruler and start measuring across on the top. And we'll mark off, putting your ruler all the way to the top if you can. I'm going to see if I can get my camera positioned here so it can show what I'm doing here. I think you might see it a little better at this angle. So get your ruler all the way to the edge if you can. So you got the line lined up with the edge of the canvas. And starting from left to right, just make some little hash marks. 2, 4. Try to keep your ruler parallel with the edge of the canvas. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, and then 14. And then 16 is going to be, on the edge. And if your canvas is shaped where, the 16, maybe your canvas falls short of the 16-inch mark, don't worry about it, because as long as you're going from left to right, it'll be fine. And you have to go from left to right on the bottom as well. And I'm going to actually, go about 2 inches from the bottom, just because my ruler doesn't meet all the way down and I have to connect these lines. So I'm not going to take it all the way down there on the bottom, but we're going to go ahead and mark off here the same thing. Just make sure I've got the lines lined up. And if you look at your canvas, there's going to be kind of a rounded edge. There'll be a little bit of a rounded edge, and so what you want to do is really look at it straight on as much as you can and just kind of eyeball it so that the edge of your ruler, and just make sure you're following the actual edge of the ruler. I'll show you here, perhaps on this camera you can see it, but see that the actual inch starts away from the edge of the metal. It actually starts right here. I don't know if you can see that or not. The light's kind of glaring on it. You see that marking? Anyway, it starts right there. So you want to count from that edge there, not the metal edge of the ruler or plastic or wood or whatever you have. Count it from the actual edge where, the lines are. I know, this might be something that's like, this is obvious, but you just never know. And I always like to, it's better to over-explain things, I think, than to under-explain things. So if I over-explain it, I'm sorry, but I just want to make sure everybody knows. All right, let's go back to this. So when you're lining up that line, then get it to fall on the edge of the canvas, not the rounded part. There's kind of a little bevel there, but get it to fall right on that edge, and then you'll make sure you have a precise measurement. So let me bring that up, like I say, about 2 inches from the edge so that I can meet these lines. So right about here, and then we'll go to 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. Kind of off camera there, but got the lines and you might be able to just see them. They're very light. And we are using a 30% gray Prismacolor colored pencil for this. So if you have something like that, that's going to work well. Whether it's cool or warm doesn't matter. Just want to make sure it's like, really light. 30% is good. And don't use watercolor colored pencil. Make sure you're using a wax-based colored pencil like Prismacolor. All right, so we've got the vertical points drawn to create our vertical lines. Now let's do the lines going upward, which would be, to get in our horizontal lines. And we're going to do the same thing, and I'm going to start on the bottom edge on both the left and the right side. So let's do that. Hopefully my head doesn't get in the way. Let's try not to have it get in the way here. Yeah, I just have to line this up and then I'll move my head out of the way. All right, so 2, 4, 6, 18, and then 20. 20 is going to be on the top here. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20. So all the way to the top, we're going to do the same thing on the other side. Get that lined up. 2, 4, 6. Just make Make sure I have that marking correct. Okay, and then 18, let's hit that. Now we've got all of our markings here, and we can now connect the lines. So let's go ahead and connect those lines, and voila, you'll have a grid. We'll go ahead and start on this side. And I put my ruler to the left side of the hash marks that I made. That just works for me. But, you know, depending on whether you're left-handed, right-handed, you might do it differently. So I just want to make sure that I can see those hash marks. So right here, we've got that bottom hash mark, and I'm just moving that ruler just a little bit to the left of it. I want to still see it. I don't want the ruler on the mark. I just want it just a bit to the left of it. All right, so now we're going to draw our line using medium amount of pressure. You hold the ruler down. This is a flexible ruler, so it kind of helps because it conforms to the canvas. As you press on this canvas, you know, it kind of buckles a little bit, and it helps to have it kind of flow with that. So I've got one line. You probably can just barely see it. It's very, very, very faint. I'll just kind of move my camera up so you can see it a little bit more. And that's what it looks like right in the middle here. All right, we're going to draw the next line. I'm going to keep my ruler on the left side of these hash marks. We're just going to connect these lines all the way across. A nice tip for you: make sure your colored pencil is very, very sharp. It's going to make it a lot easier to draw these grid lines. So, you know, go ahead and get your pencil sharpener and really get that to a nice point, just like this. If you can see that, just like that. All right, we'll continue. Sometimes you might have the line kind of jump underneath your ruler a little bit. That's not a big deal. You can always erase it if it does. And you should find that this colored pencil erases very, very nicely off of the surface because it is prepared with your matte medium and your gesso. Okay, so you just can see what this looks like here. Got these lines created. You might be able to just barely see them. And this is what it looks like here closer up. So again, they're very faint, but they're on my end, as I see them here in person, they're quite a bit more visible than what you probably see on your camera. So just keep that in mind. All right, I'm going to sharpen my colored pencil, and then we're going to do the lines going across. Okay, now let's go ahead and start from the top and work our way down to the bottom. I'm going to hold my ruler below the hash marks. Just kind of get them lined up here. Oops. All right. Let's do the next one. And continue this process. Even pressure all the way across as much as you can. Takes a little practice. Okay, so now I have the grid lines just about done. I am missing the grid lines on the bottom. So if you see in my close up here of the camera, let's bring that down just a little further. I'm just missing the grid lines on the bottom because if you remember, my ruler didn't go all the way down. So I can finish that off just by, you know, marking off a couple of hash marks here. So let's just go ahead and do that. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. And then I'll just connect those quickly with the grid line. So just kind of connect it. Oops. I don't know if I got that quite on there. These lines in the bottom are not going to be that important because it's not, I don't think we even have anything to draw here. So it's not a huge problem if they're perfect or not. There's really nothing on the bottom except for like snow and stuff. So I'm just going to draw them really lightly and not fuss about it. All right, that's good enough. All right, so now let's go ahead and sharpen our pencil again because we need to do the inset grid. And so the inset grid, we're still in step number 3, and we're creating the grid, and we just want to get the detail part, like I mentioned before. As we look at the detail in the reference photo, you got to get the second part. So this will be basically dividing the squares we have, and we'll only be doing it for a portion of the grid. Now, you could double it up on the entire grid, but it makes it very confusing sometimes to know where you're at when you have such small squares and you have so many squares. You can easily get lost as you're sketching. And that's why I'm recommending only doing an inset on a portion of our grid. Let's sharpen the pencil. All right, so this is where it could get just a little trickier. I'm going to grab a smaller ruler for this. I have just a normal 12-inch ruler. It's going to be easier to work with. And we need to determine where that inset occurs by looking at our reference photo. So as you look at the reference photo, you've got 2 squares from the left. I don't know if you can see that or not. Just zoom out a little bit here so you can see that. So we have, we're counting two squares in and then 1 square from the top. All right, so that's where we're going to make our, inset. So let's do that. We're going to count 2 squares from the left, 1 from the top. That would be right here. And that's where we're going to start plotting out, 1-inch marks in between. So it's going to go kind of like this. And I'll just kind of show you here as we're working on it. We'll go ahead and mark off 1 inch, 3 inch, 5 inches, 7 inches. So 1 inch, 3 inch, 5 inches, 7. And we're going to do the same going down. We need to count how far that goes down. We're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you can put your finger on, this first square, all right, and count down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then there should be, 2 on the bottom that do not have the inset. All right, so it's going to be second up from the bottom. Oh, wait, my bad. 3 up from the bottom. Let's just recount that. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I got to make sure we get this right here. Okay, we've got 3 on the bottom that will not have the inset. So the inset is going to cover basically this inside portion. So right here. All right. And I'm going to mark this off. 1, 3, 5, 7. Starting from the left-hand side, lining up the ruler with that grid line here. And then we're going to go the other direction, and we're going to do the same thing from the bottom. Going to get in the horizontal lines going upward. So we've got 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. Let's make sure that they all correspond here. You might need to move down your hash. Yeah, I need to move down my hash mark just a bit. Verify that you've got your 2, 4, 6, 8-inch marks lined up with your grid lines. Otherwise, you could get off a little bit on it. It could be a little bit inaccurate. So we'll just make sure we have this lined up here. So 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. Might just need to erase this. So I had these marks just a little bit off here on the top. All right. So here we go. Let's make sure they're lined up. 3, 5, 7, 9, and 11. Same thing on the other side. And our inset is how many squares? Oh, I drew too many marks. All right. Sorry about that. I mean, you could have the inset going further, but we don't want to make it different than our reference photo. We're going to erase that last mark. We should have insets going actually just for 3 squares. So you're only going to be going, for these squares going across 1, 3, and 5, not 7. My apologies. 1, 3, 5. So if you followed along, you might have made the mistake with me, but no worries. Just erase those hash marks on the last row. And we're just having 1, 3, 5, and then 1, 3, 5. That's it. All right, so let's go ahead and connect these. All right, so this would be the first line. And the inset grid is a little bit new to me. I don't use this very often. It's kind of a newer thing I've been employing, so apologize that I didn't get that right the first time. But this is part of the process. We all will make some mistakes in this process of creating a portrait, and that's okay. That's okay. It's just like, with our lives, we can make mistakes, but God is merciful to us, and He gives us forgiveness through Jesus Christ, and everything can be made just like brand new. All right, so drew those lines in. Oh, and I do need to put in the hash marks for the other side. So we're going to mark these while we have the ruler up here. 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, and 11. So these are your hash marks going vertically to get the lines that go across for your inset. 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, and 11. All right, so this is what we have so far. I've got three squares that are subdivided, 3 2-inch squares that are subdivided into 1-inch squares, at least going across. Now we have to do the lines that are going down. So you can either start from the bottom, working your way up to the top, or vice versa. I'm going to start from the top. So we'll go like this, and I'm drawing the line above the ruler just because of gravity. It's going to be easier that way. My shoulders are getting a little bit of a workout here holding up this ruler like this. All right. Okay, so that's what that looks like. You should be able to see it here on the detail shot. That's what it looks like from a distance with that inset grid. I just decided to take a slightly different route. I'm gonna add an extra set of squares to the bottom, just so that we have 3x7 here, and it'll give us a little more detail work on the bottom edge. So let's go ahead and just mark this off here from the left-hand side. And I'll mark in 1, 3, 5. Do the same. Going on the bottom, lining everything up. 1. So we'll mark it this way. Yeah, we'll need to do it this way. 1. There we go. So we're just going to line up these hash marks here. I don't know if you can see that. My ruler the other way. All right, so now we have our inset squares going just one more row below what it was. So you'll have 3 across by 7 high. I like that number better. So anyway, I'm going to give you another image here with the inset grid, another reference image. I'll email that to you so that you'll have that. And then if you sign up for the challenge, after the fact, I'll make sure it's included with your resources on the confirmation page. All right, well, I'm going to see you in that next step where we're going to seal everything in here with matte medium. All right, let's go ahead and seal in our grid lines with matte medium. So what you want to do is take a small disposable mini cup or whatever you have that can hold a little bit of matte medium, and go ahead and squirt some matte medium into the cup. So it just basically, fills it up about this much. Shouldn't need a whole lot, maybe about 1/3 of the way full. And we're going to go ahead and just brush seal this. Same process as doing the gesso, left-hand side, brushing vertical strokes. Have a lot of matte medium on your brush, and that's going to allow you then to keep the colored pencil from smearing. If it smears a little bit, it's not a huge thing, but really the secret is to have a lot on your brush. So, like this, just big dollops of it. And you just really brush that on with a nice thick application. That will generally keep it from smearing. Don't want to overbrush it, but that should be enough right there. Make sure you don't have any drips, just kind of inspect everything. Okay, so that's that process. And now you want to let this dry for, I don't know, half an hour, a couple of hours. It all depends on your environment. For me here with the wood heat in Wisconsin in winter, it's going to be ready to go probably in less than a half an hour. Might even be just 15 minutes. But once you have everything nice and dry, then you want to go ahead and apply a gesso matte medium layer. All right, so let it dry, and I'll meet you in step number 5, where we're going to finish this off with a layer of gesso and matte medium. I'll see you there. Now for the last and final step, where we're going to be sealing in our canvas with the mixture of gesso and matte medium. Now previously in step number 4, we applied a layer of just matte medium to the canvas, but now it's time to actually seal it in with a little bit of gesso and matte medium mixed together. The reason why we do this is so that we can just kind of mute the grid lines a little bit. They're a little bit dark, and it's going to make it hard to cover up later because we don't want these grids to be evident in our final painting. And by muting them down just a little bit, our sketch is going to stand out more, and it'll be easier to white out those grid lines in the painting process. So to do this, you'll want to take your mixture of matte medium and gesso that you previously used in the beginning steps to prep the canvas, and add some matte medium to that. So you're going to extend the ratio to about 2/3 matte medium to 1/3 gesso, something like that. And just mix it together. And then we're going to apply that to the canvas. So you can take your 1-inch flat brush, and working from the left to right, just as we have in the past, go ahead and apply that and get as smooth of a layer as you can. And we'll finish up on that right-hand side. Okay, and so this is what it'll look like. Just muted down a little bit. And just let that dry. And after it dries, you will be set to go for the sketch. So give it maybe about, I don't know, 30 minutes. Hour. It's probably going to take longer depending on where you live, and I've said this many times, so it would be good to give it several hours if you can. Make sure it's completely dry to the touch. Even let it dry overnight for best results, and then you can begin into the sketch. So that is the end of this lesson here, prepping the canvas for the portrait. Thank you so much for watching this lesson. Be sure to sign up for the challenge if you haven't done that already. Again, you can do that at realisticacrylic.com/acrylic-portrait-painting-challenge. And go ahead and sign up. It's completely free. We'll get you set up with a welcome kit, and you can paint along with us. But hey, I am so excited to see your progress in this. I know this is a lot of work to prep for the sketch. It'll be worth it though, putting in this effort, getting everything lined up so you can do an accurate sketch, get excellent proportions, and paint a portrait you can be proud of. So I'm looking forward to teaching you the next step, which is going to be sketching your portrait. That's coming up next year. So look forward to meeting with you again. Until then, God bless you. Happy painting. We'll talk to you soon. Take care.